Hello and welcome. It's Frances here. Thank you for coming back to my channel. If this is your first time here, I bid thee welcome. There is a subscribe button below if you would like to help support this channel by subscribing. Also a bell to be notified as to when I upload more content. I'm coming to you from Ghana country, and as such, I acknowledge the Ghana people of the Adelaide Plains as being the traditional custodians of this land. So it's hard to believe we're in December already, and the end of the year, well, calendar year is fast approaching. And this is often a time where I guess self-reflection begins to kick in, almost setting up feelings of panic in our minds as we quickly bypass our achievements to focus on what we have not yet achieved. Now, I don't know if you have ever wondered why we do that. When I caught myself doing it this morning, I started to wonder, why do we focus more on the negative, what we have not achieved, as to the positive, what we have achieved? Is this something that we are naturally hardwired to do? Or is it something that we have been externally conditioned, encouraged to do? So this is just a thought as I found myself doing this morning. However, this is not meant to be the purpose of this video, and but I guess in a way it sort of ties in, because what I did want to sort of share some thoughts with you about is the energetics. I mean, this year we're already in December and it feels like this year's just gone so fast. Has it really? I have heard a lot of people, normal people, spiritual people, people on the internet, around the world, talking about how the energetics are speeding up. And especially energetically, and they actually have for a while. It's not just new age mumbo jumbo or woo-woo thought. It's actually been scientifically proven. Then again, some people don't believe in science these days. But it has been reported, or it was reported a number of years ago, that instead of a rate of around about 86,400 seconds per day that it takes for the Earth to spin on its axis, and it's been doing this at this rate for many decades. In 2022, I think it was, the Earth's spin was actually completed in 1.59 milliseconds, under 24 hours. So I guess this is a new record, and don't we love new records? And I think the next question is if the Earth is continuing to increase on its spin on its axis, what does this actually mean to us? I know I don't know. I haven't actually looked too much into this concept for this video. But when we do think about it, the spinning Earth, because it's, molten core, would have an effect on the energetics that it produces from the torus field that comes out. And that in turn will affect everything on the planet, including us. And as we are energetic beings as well, that would in turn affect our own energy. And this is something that astrologers and other spiritual people, especially in my sphere that I circulate in, have been talking about for a while. I know, it's been at least nearly 15 years that actually was a goddess conference in Queensland I went to, where Lucy Cavendish talked about slowing down. Our heartbeats slow down with the earth, and she led us through a drumming experience there. But in more recent times, a lot of people are talking about how things are speeding up, especially end of this year, moving into next year, and I think even into 2026. And when we look back on this year, it's almost been like a big release year, a big letting go, surrendering of the lightning, the load as we are spinning up, or our energetics are spinning up. Now, I know I've been sort of talking about this, reflecting back on the big conjunction it had in 2020 between Jupiter and Saturn, and that sort of almost set the foundation. But even just in more recent times, looking back to November, I don't know about you, but there's certainly been a lot of, should we say, surrender happening in my life. Maybe October, if I actually look a little back a little bit more realistically. There is a lot of change happening around us, a lot of the old structures being dissolved, continuously being dissolved, making way for the new. It can feel overwhelming. Even if you're open to change, it can be overwhelming due to the sheer volume of what's happening around us. And added to this, there is also what's happening on a global field. So much change. And when we add the energetics to it, of every single person, how many humans are there? How many billions of humans all going through this energetic change? I'm quite sure you can start seeing that, yep, there's a lot happening. And in more ways than one, it's becoming increasingly important to ensure that we as individuals really focus on grounding, balancing our energies, finding that place of inner calmness, even ensuring our boundaries as to a check-in, especially if you have a lot of external pull, shall we say, on your own energetics. Because it's all about surrender. It's about letting go. It is getting to a stage or being reminded how essential it is for us to get rid of the old, to allow the new to come in. And this is something that we no longer can keep our heads buried in the sand about. Yet, in saying that, we really see a division occurring with those still looking backwards, sort of hanging on to the old values and perceptions, still focusing on their sacrificial lambs to make their points. All the while, the tide has turned. It's not turning, it has actually turned. The change is happening. And bringing back that analogy about the tides turning, when they turn, there can be a level of disorientation, especially as the familiar is feeling like it's really slipping out of our grasp and nothing yet has manifested that we're consciously aware to take its place. Yet there's a lot of stuff sort of happening behind the scenes that on a cosmic level we are not aware of here in our mundane human consciousness. As such, this sort of opens up the feelings that we are in a place of unknowing. And this is something that we have long been taught to fear, especially as things that are in need of being released, need to be released, coming back into our conscious awareness or our shadow stuff, rising to our forefront for us to acknowledge, or our skeletons in the closet coming out to say hello. So instead of making ourselves busy and even more busier, I know I do that, as a way of sort of distracting ourselves. We really need to sit and find time to sit and allow these things to happen, to be finalized, to be acknowledged, to be released. The past attachments that have not been working for us, we need to be honest and let them go. Our old emotional triggers and patterns, stop blaming other people or external forces. It's our emotional connection to that trigger that needs to be identified, acknowledged, released. All those unprocessed emotions that we have been holding on to from previous experiences, because in a way, when we hold on to them, we feel justified, we feel safe, validated as to our inability to move forward because we are still in the past because of all these experiences we have endured. The anger, the sadness, the guilt, fear, the blame. It's now time to own up and be honest with ourselves as to, are we going to continue carrying these things forward, or are we going to seek help and assistance? And I know this can be very difficult depending on the circumstances and situations for people and the experience itself. And it can actually be a lifetime experience of working through it. And depending on the experience, it could be something that we can only deal with in little steps. And that's okay. Allowing ourselves that space to feel into what we can feel into at the time is just as good as doing all of the work. Little steps at a time, we're still chipping away at what's holding us back. We're still opening up space to allow something new that we want, need, desire, especially on a soul level, into our lives. And in doing this work, regardless of what level we're doing it at, it can be very intense energetically. It can seem as if our external self, how we present ourselves in the world, is cool, calm, collective, while inside we are sort of dissolving into mush. Or it could be the other way around. Internally, we can come to this place of calmness and peace, while our external world is falling apart. And I suppose the most important thing so we can get through this change, because this change is going to happen whether we want it or not, is to breathe, is to be gentle on ourselves, to also keep in mind that as a collective, we are all going through very intense, chaotic times. Being mindful doesn't mean allowing bad behavior or using it as an excuse. It's just being mindful, being more aware. And this is another aspect that's coming in. This is the newness. So coming back to the individual, the inner self needs more self-care. And it's looking at what works for you on an individual level. Quiet reflection, expression through art, whether it's painting or poetry or modeling, get some modeling clay, or make some yourself, some Play-Doh even, making something, and then you can transform into something else. Or you might be into journaling and writing things down, or on these days with our mobile phones, we have the record button to get stuff out. You may even be into building sandcastles This is going to be equally as beneficial with digging in the garden, being out in nature, doing something physical, whether it's, running or at the gym or yoga or even Tai Chi, depending on what your capabilities are. Because it's all about personal reckoning. It's about revaluing the areas in your life. And I think a lot of us have been doing this. It's also about reevaluating who we are. Do we even know who we are? Our connections, our relationships with the people around us. And all of this can bring up challenges as we find out that things that once gave us so much pleasure or satisfaction no longer do. We find that we have more allergies, or allergies may have cleared up. That foods we might have once enjoyed eating, we no longer can tolerate. And this is because our energetics are changing. And so are we. We are pulling away more and more from what no longer serves us, what no longer feels true to us, what we are no longer in alignment with. And instead of being convinced that maybe we're being silly, maybe we're just wrong, we are also stepping more and more into our own power, our own personal sovereignty, so to speak, and actually walking away, releasing the influence of others, searching for something new, searching for something that resonates more with us. However, I think it is important to just keep in mind that what this new thing that we are searching for to fill this gap hasn't yet fully manifested. It's in the process of being birthed, and it's going to take a little while for it to be birthed, like a couple of years at least. So it's a bit like a seed that's been planted in the ground that's starting to sprout. It's not just birthed forth into its full potential, but it's broken through the surface. And we're sort of stepping into a holding pattern, this pregnant pause between the exhalation as we surrender and breathe out the old, and before the inhalation. So we are actually waiting to breathe in the new. And as we head towards a new calendar year, there is going to be more change waiting for us. And this is supported by the astrology. We've got a lot of big transits happening that I'm in the process of sort of like putting together in a video for you. And if we are totally honest, this has been happening for a while, as I said, since the big conjunction between Jupiter and Saturn back in December 2020. So the emphasis is on this holding space of simply being. We do have more release work to do. We need to stop fighting the change because it's coming regardless of whether we're ready for it and we want it or not. We've actually passed that tipping point. We need to sort of feel into the unfamiliar, the uncomfortable, the unknown. And almost also release expectations because we truly do not know what to expect. We're only really making assumptions and guesses based on the past, based on past patterns, calculated guesses even. Yes, it's all new. I do feel we need to get back in touch with our internal compass and trusting ourselves more, our body, our feelings, what actually sits right with us. We have all been true really in handing over our autonomy, our power, ourselves to others, whether it's through so-called conveniences or mob rules or the desire to fit in, FOMO, fear of missing out if we don't. we have allowed ourselves to be distracted by the shiny thing. This willingness that we display to dehumanize ourselves. We have long been sort of brought into the shaming of being human, especially around our bodily function. And we have, in more recent times, really extends this to how we excessively modify ourselves now, almost to the degree of artificial perfection. We're all human. Our nature. Nature's perfection is in its own imperfection. So I guess as we sort of begin to feel into this holding pattern, readying ourselves to step into the new, it is increasingly important that we come back to what being human is truly about, our own human consciousness, our own human connection, our own humanness. Is that a word? Probably not, I don't know what it means to be human. And this starts, really begins with us coming back to ourself, our own self, reintroducing ourselves to us, trusting our own selves, and also discovering the uniqueness, I think, of being human, being us, being me, being you. And I think the more that we breathe into this, allow the new us to emerge, the more we find a place in this new world that's also emerging. So breathe, come back to the self, come back to you. Acknowledge the loss, acknowledge the emotions that are rising up, fear, the guilt, the anger, the rage, but move them through. This is where bodywork comes in. I know there's differing opinions. Some people say that we shouldn't manifest, say, rage in particular externally, but we can't hold on to our bodies. That can be damaging. So write the unwritable letter or the unsendable letter. Journal your thoughts. Build your castles on the beach, your dreams, your desires. Process. Trust yourself. And breathe. Remember, we are all going through this. Some of us are coping better than others. And what you see externally in other people may not be what's going on inside. Especially as we're coming up to this time of the year where it can be very difficult for a lot of people, regardless of whether we have loved ones or not. There's also an increased sense of failure when we have not been able to provide for our loved ones, especially in this global financial situation we're all in. And I think for each and every one of us, again, we're needing to come back to what's really important. Our boundaries, our sense of connectedness with the right people, getting to know ourselves again. And breathe. Be gentle on yourself. Blessings.